esteemed members of the press, and of course, my team. You may recall that to the onset of the rainy season, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, has presented its seasonal climate prediction for 2022 to the public on 17th of February 2022 in an event that was given maximum coverage by the press. According to the seasonal climate prediction, the 2022 annual rainfall pattern is expected to be normal to above normal throughout Nigeria. In the same vein, the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency, NISA, in its 2022 annual flood outlook, has also forecasted flood situation for different parts of the country. The flood outlook highlighted that 233 local government areas in 32 states and the FCT are within highly probable flood risk areas, while 212 local government areas in 35 states of the Federation are within the moderately probable flood risk areas. Furthermore, the annual flood outlook predicted coastal flooding in Rivers, Delta, Lagos, and Bayelsa states due to rise in sea level and tidal surge, and urban flooding in some locations such as Lagos, Abeokuta, Osogbo, Ibadan, Benin City, Asaba, Warri, Onitsha, Port Harcourt, Kaduna, Sokoto, Yola, Abakaliki, Birnin Kebbi, Makurdi, and other major cities as a result of poor drainage system management. As part of its annual flood disaster preparedness, the National Emergency Management Agency convened a meeting of all stakeholders between 26th to 27th of April this year to critically analyze the 2022 annual climate prediction and the annual flood outlook and come up with the disaster management implication of the two predictions. At the end of the two-day meeting, the group of experts came up with the 2022 disaster early warning messages, highlighting the implications and recommendations across climate-sensitive socio-economic sectors, including water resources and infrastructure, agriculture and food security, health, transport, and infrastructure. Letters of the flood early warning messages produced were sent to all the state governors, the FCT minister, and members of the National Assembly, as well as respective recommendations to mitigate impacts of the anticipated outcomes and avert loss of lives, means of livelihoods, public and critical national assets, and environmental dislocation. The ministry, through the National Emergency Management Agency, produced flood vulnerability mappings for the whole country based on the 2022 AFO released by NISA, highlighting all communities at risk, and shared the documents with our partners. Throughout the period, the ministry has worked closely with state governments and all relevant partners to achieve its mandates for effective and efficient disaster management in Nigeria. In monitoring the level of preparedness of state governments and other partners, the ministry, through NEMA, has constantly evaluated the plans they are putting in place in response to the recommendations contained in the early warning messages. In furtherance to its mandate of disaster risk reduction, the Ministry, through the National Emergency Management Agency, has also organized a national workshop on the 2nd of August this year, which focused on disaster management implication of the predictions by NIMET and NISA to enable effective flood preparedness, prevention, mitigation, and response nationwide. The workshop recorded a total of over 150 participants from members of the National Assembly, federal ministries, departments, and agencies, UN agencies, state emergency management agencies, local and international NGOs, Red Cross, academia, CBOs, media, armed forces, paramilitary organizations, dam managers, and river basin authorities. And at the end of the workshop, a communique with far-reaching recommendations was issued to the public. This is to say that the government was fully on top of the situation and we were prepared. Subsequently, flood early warning jingles were broadcasted through selected radio and TV stations in both English and local languages to sensitize the public on flood disaster preparedness, mitigation, and response. The current disaster outlook indicates that so far, the flood has wreaked havoc in 36 states of the Federation and the FCT. 612 persons were reported dead, 3,219,780 persons were affected, 1,427,370 persons were displaced, and 2,776 others are injured. A total of 181,600 houses are partially damaged, while 123,807 houses are totally damaged. 176,852 hectares of farmland are partially damaged, while 392,300 hectares of farmlands are totally destroyed. There is a widespread environmental dislocation as a result of this flood. All through the peak of the flood season, I have personally led NEMA emergency response teams to some of the disaster hotspots nationwide to conduct damage and loss assessments in collaboration with state emergency management agencies. The ministry through NEMA has deployed its emergency response assets, including mobile water purification equipment, search and rescue boats, and mobile intensive care units, ambulances, to conduct life-saving first aid and support to vulnerable populations. So far, NEMA has reached out to and responded to over 1,427,370 displaced persons in 28 states and the FCT. The provision of food and non-food items for immediate relief and building materials to facilitate rehabilitation of the impacted population is still ongoing. These states that we have reached are Abia, Adamawa, Anambra, Bayelsa, Ekiti, Enugu, Ebonyi, Imo, Jigawa, Kaduna, Kano, Kwara, Lagos, Nasarawa, Niger, Ogun, Ondo, Oyo, Rivers, Sokoto, Taraba, Yobe, Oshun, Ekiti, Edo, Delta, Bauchi, and the Federal Capital Territory. The remaining 6 states comprising of Akwa Ibom, Cross Rivers, Kwara, Zamfara, Katsina, Kebbi, Borno, and Gombe are still ongoing. Our efforts are already on ground. Our officers are on ground in Gombe, Katsina, Zamfara, and Borno to flag off the distribution today. In furtherance of the federal government intervention to vulnerable population, His Excellency President Muhammad Buhari has approved the release of 12,000 metric tons of grains comprising of sorghum, millet, and gari from the National Strategic Reserve to NEMA for distribution to 36 states and the FCT. Most of the states have already received their consignment of the grains. The Presidential Committee on Flood Relief and Rehabilitation under the chairmanship of Alhaji Aliko Dangote has donated assorted foodstuff worth 1.5 billion naira to NEMA for distribution to all the states of the Federation. And NEMA has already provided warehouse facilities in the 6 geopolitical zones of the Federation to receive the items. A plan has also been put in place by NEMA to transport and hand over the relief materials to the state government and the FCT authority. The Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, and Social Development is coordinating a country-wide support by World Bank to undertake a comprehensive impact analysis and post-disaster needs assessment similar to what had obtained after the 2012 flood. This will enable government to appreciate the extent of damage caused by the flood, including the economic cost implication on housing, infrastructure, agriculture, and other sectors. NEMA has also requested support from the United Nations in respect of assistance from the Central Emergency Relief Funds. UN OCHA has confirmed that some UN agencies have accessed the funds and will soon intervene across sectors. Going forward, the ministry, through NEMA and through the zonal offices, territorial and operation offices nationwide, will be conducting a damage and loss assessment on farmlands, fisheries, poultry facilities, and livestock to enable effective planning for emergency agricultural intervention as the flood waters recede to support farmers, our farmers, fishery owners, and pastoralists to get back to work and safeguard the heavily impacted national food security. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, while we have done everything possible to ensure early response to population in need from the inception of the flood seasons, there's no doubt that a lot of challenges have been encountered during the operation. Some of the challenges include the slow movement of both human and material assets, in addition to relief items due to flooded and washed away roads, bridges, and issues of safety and security in some areas. In some instances, our partners in the Nigerian Air Force and military disaster response units have supported us with their assets to conduct airdrop of relief materials in cut-away locations. I want to use this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation to His Excellency President Muhammad Buhari and all other stakeholders and our esteemed partners, especially members of the press, for supporting us to deliver this life-saving support to affected persons from the onset of the rainy season. I will, on this note, now ask for the presentation. I'm sure it has been showing the visuals of our interventions, and I will welcome any questions or observations. Adeshwa from Arise, you asked how are these relief items being distributed? Well, if anything, the COVID has taught us a lesson, and we have learned from that. This time around, we're engaging everybody that is a stakeholder in a state. Before going for the intervention, we have written letters to different groups, the state government to start with, faith-based organizations, NGOs and CSOs, and community leaders that were coming to this state with so items to be distributed to so number of beneficiaries. And I think so far, so good. This model is working, and I'm sure we will not have such kind of issues that we had during COVID, because now we are using a whole of government and all of society approach to take our interventions. And the other issue is if we are trying to absolve the federal government, well, we have stated the facts. We have done what we're supposed to do as a government at the federal level. But these issues does not just begin or concerns the federal government. There are other authorities, individuals as well, that they have to take precautionary measures. And we have done that. We have done a lot of sensitization. As we all know, we cannot stop floods or some kind of natural disasters, but how to mitigate such disasters is what is important, and we have done quite much in this regard. The other issue by Aliyu, I don't know about Emudu being distributed, honestly, and because we distribute in sacks, you know, not in mudus. So I don't know, I'm sure you have seen that when we take these interventions across the country, is in bags of, 25 kg minimum. That is what we take. No, not from our own end, honestly, not from this end. We don't. It's going to be very cumbersome anyway. How do you go and start sharing modules? The numbers are quite huge. And the other issue raised by VOA, the challenges I have stated mostly is due to the inaccessibility of the areas that we're supposed to take these interventions to us at prompt response, but because of the roads that are inaccessible, we experience some delays before these items get there, and then the victims begin to wonder if we are coming at all. This is really the main challenge, and that is also beyond us. But we are trying our best. As I mentioned in my statement, we have engaged the services of other experts, the military and Air Force, to see how they can support us to airdrop some of these food items to these inaccessible areas, and they have been supporting very well. And The other issue raised by Yomi on collaboration, of course, we have to collaborate with the state. I've mentioned we're involving every stakeholder in this, and then the states also have to do something. So it's not as if we are not collaborating. They are supposed to be the first responders anyway, because once these disasters happen, it's within their states, and they have state emergency management agencies and local government emergency management agencies that will have to move in immediately to support, together with our team, because in most of these states, in almost all the states across the country, we have NEMA officers on ground that work together. So there's a lot of collaboration, and everyone knows what to do in this regard. Thank you very much. Question by Felix, and when will government be launching a humanitarian appeal fund? Honestly, I'm not aware there's such fund, appeal fund coming. We have not requested for that. Government is doing everything possible now. I don't know, maybe somewhere in the future, but for now, there's no such appeal fund in the pipeline. On the issue raised by Vanguard, state governments are complaining that we are not there on the spot. Is that the question? We have to show our presence. I've mentioned that we have officers in all the states, and they are supporting the state officials to give support to these victims. Where it is possible for us to visit, we have visited. But the most important thing is the response, which we have given a very quick response to the states affected, Benue inclusive. Then the other issue raised on the infrastructure, yes, I think the relevant ministries are working on this. We have a plan in place, a flood emergency or preparedness plan is in place, and every MDA has a role to play in this, and we have started operationalizing that plan. That plan has just been approved by the Federal Executive Council in September this year. Gloria, allegations of looting, we have not received any official complaint on this, but I assure you that we have engaged the services of security agencies to support us secure our warehouses in the states, and when we're doing even the distributions, they are present there. I've not received any official complaint on looting, but we'll go back and ask questions. Sorry? Huh? I'm not aware of any diversion. It's not even possible now that we're engaging everybody. Everybody is aware of what is coming to that state before it even arrives. So it will be very difficult for any diversion. The other issue on the US ambassador, I saw her also. I don't know where that money was taken to. It has not come to my ministry, honestly, but it is important to know that some of these partners, they rather do things themselves. We have not received $1 as a ministry from any organization. What the UN agencies do, they sometimes ask us our area of concern, and we give them, and they go themselves and do these interventions. So I'm not aware of this because it has not come to me officially, or even to NEMA. I don't know. So, well, we don't know. Routes on the farmland destroyed. As a government, we have just told you that we have been given 12,000 metric tons of grains. That is in millions, or about 400 trucks, 400 trailers. Even the logistics of deploying these items is in hundreds of millions. And then our own budgetary allocation is there. Intervention to NEMA is there, Mr. President. We must appreciate him. He has given us support in this regard. So it is in millions of naira. The other issue on this farmland destroyed, yes, I'm sure you may recall that we have a presidential committee on food security. Now we are doing the assessment of those farmlands that are going to be, that are destroyed, and we submit our report to the Food Security Council, which is being chaired by His Excellency Mr. President, and the Vice Chair is His Excellency the Governor of Kebbi State. So once that is done, we'll know the next step to take, but definitely farmers will be compensated. Those that lost their means of livelihoods will also be compensated accordingly. Thank you very much. And that is why we have the Food Security Council, and I just mentioned that we're doing the assessments and something is going to be done. Definitely, once we submit our report, farmers will be compensated. There's going to be dry season farming, definitely, to cushion this effect.
You said national food security has been heavily impacted. So is there going to be, are we going to see any food shortage next year?
Well, with the intervention that we hope is coming very soon, the dry season farming is going to cushion that effect. I'm very optimistic about that. We don't hope for food shortage, Gloria. We don't hope for that. Cereal, let me use this opportunity to extend our heartfelt condolences to the families of those who lost their lives. Lives have been lost, very unfortunate. There were early warnings and hence early action by all, the nationals, subnationals, and even individuals that were prone to this disaster. We have erected temporary shelters, about 48 of them. 44 temporary shelters in 22 states. Some people moved to those shelters while others did not. Very unfortunate. And I think at this point, I quite agree that there should be enforcement going forward. We mentioned 12,000 metric tons that was given to us by Ministry of Agric, but that is in addition to other interventions. It's not just the 12,000 metric tons. If you look at it, I didn't mention rice and other condiments, which we have provided, and other food items, and even non-food items. So it's not just the 12,000 metric tons that was provided. How much we need, that will also be after the assessment. I cannot really say how much federal government needs. Very soon. And the people, the real people that are affected, they are going to be the real people that will be provided this support, because we have on-the-spot assessment. We are working with the local authorities, with the affected communities, to gather this data of the affected persons. So I want to believe, I'm optimistic that the targeted beneficiaries will be the ones that will be given these interventions. And the silverbird, yes, enforcement is very key, and I think going forward that is what should be done, so that it shouldn't be a matter of choice for one to be evacuated. It shouldn't be really, because we are talking about human lives here. That will have to be done. Yes, Tribune. We have, as I mentioned, we have evacuated those that agreed to be evacuated. Some people feel these are their ancestral places, and so they do not want to leave, or they will not leave, and then they face the consequences. But we hope that next time people will heed to these early warnings, and then will heed to the evacuation program. I think that is okay. The other one is by Daily Trust. Almost all of Bayelsa, but it will also interest you to know that Bayelsa is not even amongst the 10 most hit. I think Jigawa is number one. And we have taken intervention to Bayelsa, and it's still ongoing. We are using the Nigerian Air Force to access the inaccessible areas. These are natural disasters. We just hope that and pray that we don't see that again. It is a global phenomenon, and then the government is up and doing in this regard. Thank you very much.